What I'd like to ask you, real simple, is what do you think? You're not a betting man. I'm not a betting man. But if you were, what do you think about the opportunity for us to get a trade agreement with China? Do you think it's going to take place?
I don't think it'll take place soon. Whether it ultimately takes place, I don't know. There's likely to be some form of an agreement. Will either side achieve all of their objectives? The answer is no. That's why it's called a negotiation. I do believe that they're each weighing the political costs and benefits in a time frame leading up to the next election, but then also past the election, and deciding if there's not an agreement before the election and President Trump is reelected, how does that change the dynamic in that time frame? So you're getting out to 2 to 4 years. China's obviously experiencing some pain from this. It's not that the U.S. is not, but it's not to the degree that China is. And you may have noticed that China recently reduced the reserve requirements for their banks, which is a piece of evidence that suggests there's more economic impact there than what they're talking about in the headlines.
If you were to couch an agreement or non-agreement, I know obviously details are critical and they matter, but if we got an agreement, because a lot of it is just the sentiment, if you will, of CEOs, right, as to whether or not they're seeing this as an obstruction to growth, and so that affects their investment ideas. If we get an agreement, again, without the details being known, or don't get an agreement over the next year, how does that influence? Is it influencing your models in terms of what you think about for the overall economy in terms of GDP?
So the models are based on actuals. So any forecast is simply a complex averaging through past data with a projection for what the future might look like. The way it plays in the front office of a company is that until an agreement is established, there is uncertainty about the value of any investment because you don't know what the costs and returns will be from that investment. So it tends to tamp down the level of investment. In this case, because it's an international trade environment, it's particularly for companies who have exports from the United States or overseas operations to consider. Less so for domestic domiciled firms whose markets are primarily domestic, although there is a second round effect on them from a competitive position to companies that have both domestic and foreign investments. So just eliminating that uncertainty is helpful from a business planning perspective.